The METUS Tech Show.
Welcome to the METUS Tech Show, a show for HVAC professionals by HVAC professionals.
The METUS Tech Show.
All right, so first of all, let's get one thing straight. In order to be considered shepherd's pie, it has to be cooked with lamb, ground lamb. But I'm not a big fan of lamb, so I use ground beef.
I agree.
Steve, I know you make, I've heard that you make a mean shepherd's pie. Are you using lamb or beef?
I'm using ground beef, 85%, 80%. And you don't strain the fat.
Nope.
Because you're going to use that for the roux. So the way mine starts, I start browning about 1.5 pounds to 2 pounds of it's about 2 pounds to 2.5 pounds actually of ground beef in the frying pan. Add your onions, add your minced garlic, add some thyme, some oregano, get that going on there. And then you throw in about a 1/2 cup of ketchup. Follow me on this.
I'm liking this so
ketchup
far.
sometimes. Oh, come on.
I've never had shepherd's pie.
So let me
I
tell
don't
you.
think so. I just,
Throw about a 1/2 cup of ketchup in there, and then you throw about a teaspoon of tomato paste in there and get that going. Paprika.
Yes.
All right. And once you get that going, now you want to make your roux. So you take 3 tablespoons of flour and some water, a cup of water. So get a measuring cup of water, 3 tablespoons of flour in there, mix it up real well. And you're going to start pouring that slowly into the ground beef and mixing it around. And there's your gravy mixture for your ground beef and all that. Now you're going to transfer that over to a Pyrex or your cooking pan, whatever you want to use. And you're going to start making your mashed potatoes. So make your mashed potatoes. But when you go to mix your mashed potatoes, you're going to throw butter in. You're going to throw a little milk in there. And then you're going to throw 1 teaspoon of sugar into the mashed potatoes and a half a package of cream cheese into the mashed potatoes. Mix that all up because that cream cheese is just going to make that. It's going to make the mashed potatoes brown nice. All right. You got your mashed potatoes. You layer that over the ground beef. Well, don't forget the vegetables in between. Some people like corn. Some people like corn, peas, and carrots.
What do you
that? I just do corn.
Okay. I would eat yours.
But I've done corn, peas, and carrots frozen. Throw that in there. And then layer your mashed potatoes over the top. Some parsley flakes. A little bit more paprika over the top to give it some color. Throw it in the oven at 400 degrees for a half hour. And let me tell you, you got an amazing
I'm going to have to get this recipe
pie
from you.
I got the recipe years ago, and I get raving reviews for my shepherd's pie.
But no lamb. You just
no, I don't do lamb.
Do you guys don't like the taste of it? Or, I mean, you like?
I don't like the gaminess.
It's 50-50. I've had lamb. If I've had lamb a dozen times, I've liked it 6 times and hated it six times. It's
all right.
Touch and go. Steve, mine only varies from yours slightly different. I won't use water. I'll use beef bone broth instead of water. It gives a little more of that flavor. I do use the carrots, the peas, and the corn. I'll throw it in there. I don't use sugar, and I don't use as much ketchup as you do. I may use a tablespoon of ketchup and a tablespoon of the tomato paste. For the mashed potatoes, I'll actually save a little bit of the water that I boil the mashed potatoes in and actually put that back in the potatoes when I mash them. I'll use cream. I will use butter, like a stick of butter. And I will use, I'll use the cream cheese as well. But I also cook everything in a cast iron skillet and the beef and everything else. So I don't transfer it. I cook it in the cast iron skillet. And when everything is done there, I put the mashed potatoes on top. And I like to take a serving fork and I just drag it across the top of the mashed potato to give it ridges.
There you go. Yep.
All right. But I pretty much do everything else is done the same way that you do it. My kids love it.
And I forgot two very important things that go into the browning of the hamburg. Two very important things. Can't forget these two things. Beef bouillon and Worcestershire.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, I forgot the Worcestershire. Yeah.
Beef bouillon, Worcestershire.
The bouillon is why I use the bone broth.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
I use that instead of the water. And then they have this, instead of a bouillon cube, they have these little jars. It's like a paste. It's better than bouillon. And I really like that stuff better than the powdered
Yeah,
bouillon.
I've seen that at the supermarket.
It's wicked good. So I'll use like a teaspoon of that in there when I'm mixing up the roux and everything else. But it's good.
Is this dish you guys typically cook in the wintertime or?
Yeah, it's a winter dish.
Winter dish, yeah.
Now, I've never cooked this before, but I enjoy a good French meat pie. You guys get French meat pies?
French meat
No,
pie?
never heard of
Yeah,
it.
and this what?
Never heard of it.
Are you kidding me? Oh my
serious, I've never
goodness!
heard
You
of
gotta
French meat.
look in the supermarket in the right across from the meat section. You'll see the little coolers that are there, and every supermarket you'll see. Landry's French meat pies. They're fantastic. You put them in the oven and cook them to the directions on the package, and make some mashed potatoes to go for a side and some gravy, and it's heaven. It's
Combine beef, pork, onion, water, and a medium saucepan mix well. Interesting.
just buy the pie. Don't go through all the work. Don't go through all the work of making a French meat pie.
All right.
Yeah,
Just buy the pie.
and
I've
nothing
had meat pies. I've just never heard of a French meat pie. I don't know what the difference is
Yeah.
between a French
This-
meat pie and just.
I've
regular
never
meat.
even.
Yeah, Landry's French meat pie can't go wrong, and I guarantee you they got them here in Georgia. They have to,
You'd be amazed on what Georgia does not have.
and nothing beats a good chicken pot pie.
Oh, that's. I mean, that we can talk on, but yeah,
Chicken pot pie.
There you go.
I think he had
For
to
those
say
of you who
that.
know,
Yeah.
for those of you who know what show that's from.
But
In fact, my wife knows that she has to say it that way. I won't talk to her.
you ever had a willow tree chicken pot pie?
What is this? What is these names?
heard of that.
Willow tree chicken salad. Have you ever had willow tree chicken salad?
Dude, I don't want to speak of these things. Willow tree.
Oh man, missing out, man. The willow tree chicken pie is just loaded. It's more chicken than veggies in it.
Oh, see, that would be my type of pie.
Yeah, it's change your life. Willow tree chicken salad. It's very expensive. It's like $400 a container, but
What?
it's no, I'm just kidding.
Oh.
It's pretty expensive, but it's very very good.
Willow tree.
I
Oh, it's a
love those
brand.
kinds.
It's a brand. Willow tree.
Willow tree
Yeah.
chicken.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I've never heard of this.
There's a local farm, a turkey farm. It's actually not too far from the office, but around Thanksgiving in the fall, they got those turkey pies and chicken pies. And yeah, you cut these open. It's basically gravy and turkey meat. There's nothing else in there. You get a side of mashed potatoes to go with that, maybe a side of vegetables if you're not Scott. And it's wicked good.
So have you ever, speaking of turkey farms, Paul, have you ever been up to the Winnipesaukee area, Hart's Turkey Farm?
I have been there.
You can get at pretty much any turkey-based dinner. Just name it. They make it.
Yeah.
They got buffalo turkey. They got turkey tips. They got a full Thanksgiving meal if you want. But it's fresh. I think they butcher them right in the back of Hart's Turkey Farm, but amazing.
Yeah, I think the place is awesome.
Welcome to the METUS Tech Show, everybody. We got Scott Tallman here,
Hey, guys.
Paul Shaves,
Hey,
Steve Pimentel, myself, and we're coming at you from Georgia. We remoted Paul in here, and we're going to talk about the most important dip switches.
Top dip switches.
Well, top 10, top 20, whatever you want to call it, dip
Yeah,
switches that you
common
should
dip
be looking at, right? Where are we going to start with
Smart
this?
multi. Because
Smart multi?
that has probably the most usage as far as dip switches goes
Yeah.
into it.
so the Smart Multi is fairly a new SKU. It's not a new product, but it's a new SKU. We used to have an MXZ branch box unit, and we used to have an S series or a Pumi non-branch box unit. So now we just called it one thing. Same outdoor unit. It's called Smart Multi, and there's one switch. The first switch, Scott, I want to kick over to you.
Yeah.
Is there's a switch that I have to tell it now, because with the old MXZ, I didn't have to tell it had a branch box.
No.
I knew it had a branch box. But now we don't know if you're going to use a branch box or not with the Smart Multi outdoor unit. So how do we let it know that it has a branch box?
Yeah, to let know the system knows it's connected to a branch box, you need to hit SW2-5 to be on to be connected.
And that's on the outdoor unit.
That's the outdoor unit, correct?
Okay.
The outdoor unit, just to let it know it's a branch box. So if you're not going to use a branch box, leave it alone. If you're going to use a branch box and M&P heads, you put that switch SW2-5 in the on position.
And I just want to get something out of the way. With dip switches, remember that some dip switches, when turned on or off, immediately activate something, right?
Correct.
Where we can change it on the fly and it's immediately activating something. But other dip switches, most of our dip switches,
Yeah.
if we change that dip switch setting, what has to be done?
You have to kill power.
You got to kill power and reset. And when we say kill power, shut that disconnect off and wait 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Especially wait till the lights go out on the boards. Let that system reset. Once we turn power back on, that setting that we just changed, that dip switch activates.
Yep.
So keep that in mind. So for instance, test run on a P-Series unit, I can do on the fly.
On the fly.
This dip switch 2-5 on the Smart Multi,
That has to be reset.
it has to be reset.
Yeah.
Let me just tell you a quick story. When I first started with Mitsubishi, I was following the instructions, and the instructions called to turn the power off for 15 minutes. I waited, I think, 12 minutes, and I said, oh, that's good enough. And I turned the system back on, and the change did not take effect. So now I had to turn it off for 15 minutes. So it ended up costing me time. So if the instructions say 15 minutes, give it 15 minutes. Don't try to cheat it.
Yeah, and one more thing is the position of the dip switch. When I first started here, you know where I'm going with this. When I first started here, I was following the inside panel, looking at the inside panel of the unit.
Every class.
Yeah, I'm looking at the white position of the switch as being the actual position. If you look underneath, there's a footnote that says the black is the position of the switch.
And if you look, you got to be careful of those twos on the panel, because if you look carefully, they're all off. So a lot of people will take that panel, right? Because if you take the panel off and look at the schematic, and if you look at the wiring schematic on the board a little closer, and it shows you the positions of the dip switch, and a lot of contractors think that's the positions that they need to be in. And it's wrong, because they're all off on the schematic or on that. Now, if you look in the bottom left-hand corner of the wiring schematic on the panel, it shows you that capacity code. That's when you're hitting those particular dip switches, setting the capacity to that unit that you're on.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, but the black square, that's the position of the switch.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so you have to be careful with that.
All right, so we got that out of the way. So let's continue with the Smart Multi.
So, Steve, you said it right. Some switches, dip switches, you can turn them on the fly. Well, let's talk about SW1. That's the service switch, right? For the Smart Multi, so we can actually see data from the unit if we want to see high pressure, low pressure.
Right. So that's it. That's real-time data.
That's real-time,
displayed.
live too,
Yeah.
live data.
Yeah. Unlike maintenance tool where it gives us information every minute, we can see instant real-time data, and that's an on-the-fly dip switch.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And make sure you turn them all back off when you're done.
But that's a bug that I do. I'll leave 1-1 on, and then I'll turn the system on, and what happens, the LED screen goes blank.
Oh, yeah.
But the system works just fine.
Yep.
So, and then the guys go in there and they just mess with everything. In reality, it was just
So think about it. You left some dip switches on SW1, and you close up the panel. What happens to the next service guy that shows up? He sees a blank screen and is probably going down a rabbit hole he doesn't need to go down. So
yeah.
Return your dip switches back to factory.
And the best way to do that, guys, take a picture of your dip switches before you touch them. So that way, if you don't remember what you do, you can always refer back to your picture and put them back to the original positions.
And just while we're on the original positions, and I think we've mentioned this in several podcasts before, if you're replacing a board, the new board that's going in, make sure the dip switches match the one that you're taking out. And this is assuming that this is not why you're replacing the board. This is assuming that the switches are in the right position to begin with. And I know Steve mentioned this before, and I think just a couple of weeks ago. But when you have a dip switch, a board, you order a board. That board may go into more than one unit, and there are dip switches that tell it what size it is. So that same board could go in a dozen different units. So that make sure that's correct first of all. And assuming that all the switches were right to begin with, that's not the reason you're replacing the board. Because if you don't, then you might as well not do anything.
Yeah. And if you don't have the board, what you can do is go into the outdoor service manual, go to the dip switches, and it will show you what the original positions should be in. So you can always refer to that.
So Scott, talk about 2-3 on the Smart Multi.
That's actually a big one.
I don't think I've ever used that one.
To clear the air.
Yeah.
2-3? Yeah, for clearing the air. So best way you can do this is you can hit 2-3, right? You kill power, wait for 5-10 minutes, turn on power, and then turn on 2-3 off any error. Because sometimes we have quote unquote reoccurring error codes. It's just stuck in our system and we just need to clear it, and they're just not clearing on their own. Best way to clear an error code without hitting this dip switch is turning off power, wait 10 minutes. Well, correct the issue, right? Whatever the error code is. And then turn on power. And sometimes it just, even though you corrected the issue, just gets stuck in that, whatever that fault code, the error code's in.
P-Series will do that as well.
They do that. Yeah. And so in this case, you would hit 2-3, and then turn off power, then turn on power, and then turn 2-3 back to off. And by doing those series of events, that will clear the error that's stuck in the system.
Yeah. So that's that's a resettable.
That's resettable. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Because once it's corrected, you don't want to know what it is. And if you have another problem or an intermittent problem, you want to come back and see what it is. Hey, did this thing have an error or didn't it?
Yeah.
So clear that error.
Yeah. And this is where our weight screen shows up on the MHK2s, right? And we get contractors that fixed an error, changed the board, whatever they did, but the error is still sitting in that system.
Yep.
And what is the MHK2 going to do? It's going to show a weight screen forever. And they're going to return that controller when there's really nothing wrong with the controller. Right? So this SW2-3 on the Smart Multi will get rid of that. Will help get rid of that error.
Yeah. So
here's another switch that I get a lot of questions on, and it's SW6. The switch is 7 and 8.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. This is the big one, actually.
Cover that one? Why don't you guys take that one?
Yeah, so SW6-7 and 8, that's to change the target evaporator temperature.
So this is big with SVZs.
Now, that's to say, this is huge on an SVZ.
Yeah.
This is pretty much, you hit this when you have an SVZ.
I get contractors that show up to class, and I always ask at the beginning of class, guys, you have any questions on anything related to what you're working on in the field right now? You came to class and you're just dying to know, how do I fix this problem? And a lot of times I get guys that, hey, I got a multi-zone system or a one-to-one, and it doesn't seem like the SVZ is just putting out enough cold air. I'm not removing enough humidity. This is our multi-position air handler. And when I tell them about SW6-7 and 8.
They're mind blown, aren't they?
Right away, they're calling somebody on the phone. They got a tech in the field, or they're at that job, and they're like, "Oh my God, it fixed it." And
so out of the box, it's 48 degrees. So there's series of 4 different avenues we can play around with, and we have to be very careful how we set these dip switches, because if you thought you set it up correct, but you didn't, so you can have. So if 6, 7, and 8 are both off, that's out of the box 48 degrees, right? So say if you hit 7 on and 8 off, now you increase your evap temp to 52 degrees, all right? And then if you have 7 off and 8 on, now this is the big one. This is where it reduces from 48 to 43 degrees. This is the one we need.
Yeah.
So the big one on the call is 6-7. It needs to be off, and 6-8 need to be on to turn that target temp to 43 degrees.
Yeah.
Now, there's the big one. If you leave them both on, now it increases to 57 degrees.
Ooh, that's good to know. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I get this from contractors all the time. You guys drive me nuts. Why don't you just set it to the lowest evap temperature right out of the box?
Efficiency.
Think about it. Efficiency. Yeah. We're giving you this system at its highest efficiency. And that may just be perfect. Again, if it's not broke, don't fix it, right?
Yeah.
It may just be perfect for the application you're set up for, and it's at its highest efficiency, best performance out of the box. All right.
Yeah.
So that's why we don't do that. And at that point, you're customizing it for that application. You need to remove more humidity. You have a lot of ducted units, our air handler especially. You need a colder evaporator temperature for that unit. This is your answer.
Yeah. Yep. And mainly for the SVZ for that.
Yeah. And also, these units are going everywhere in the world. And not everybody's going to want the same evaporator temperature. So
No.
You're right.
Yeah.
They come in there for the maximum efficiency. But that's why you have a choice, because they go all over the world.
And now this brings us to SW7-1, Scott.
Yeah, inverter test, right? I remember we did a podcast on service tools, right? And one of the discussions that you and I talked about was the actual inverter test with the box, right? So in order to do an inverter test, we're testing the inverter board, right? And so by doing that, we are disconnecting the compressor off the system. Well, if you do an inverter test without hitting this particular dip switch, the system will go in error, because what you're doing, and that's is ignoring the error, the amperage. Right. It's looking for an amp increase of amp by one amp or something, whatever that number is.
Yeah, so we're disconnecting the CTs at that point.
Exactly.
We're getting rid of that out of the picture, unless you have an inverter checker hooked up to it.
Yeah.
Now it looks at that inverter checker as the compressor.
As a compressor, yeah,
so
exactly.
We had a previous episode in Mitsubishi tools. Inverter checker was one of them, and we covered that, right?
Yep. So that's what that is. And for those on the call, just to give you a heads up, we are going to have a separate podcast just on inverter testing.
Yeah.
Looking
forward to that one.
Yeah, that'll be a good one. All right. So the next one would be we're going to talk about is SW9-1.
Okay.
So for this one, this is the big one, in my opinion, because this can be some issues out in the field. All right, let's talk about this. We have a 5-head system, right?
Yeah.
And then this is going to be a big one, where maybe you have one bedroom calling for cooling and another bedroom.
Mixed modes, right?
Mixed modes.
Yeah.
And what happens in mixed modes? Probably one of the biggest phone calls contractors get.
You can't have mixed modes, right?
Yes,
it's not
absolutely.
it's not simultaneous heating and cooling. So it's one or the other. So what happens when you have 5 indoor units in cooling and someone turns one of them to heat?
Yeah.
Well, that one that it gets turned to heat goes into standby.
Standby mode.
And if it has lights on it, on like a wall unit or a floor unit or one-way cassette, it starts flashing.
Blinking, yep.
It doesn't necessarily mean an error code. It just means the unit is in standby. It is waiting for all the rest of the 4 indoor units in cooling to satisfy before the system goes to heat.
Yep.
So you're saying that SW9-1 will prioritize.
Yeah, so what'll happen is whatever your lowest, so port A off the branch box, that's going to be your lowest quote unquote address off the system.
Yes.
So if you select 9-1 to be on, right? So whatever mode that's in, so if that 9-1 is on and address that the off the first port is in cooling mode, what that'll do is putting cooling on the controller for the rest of the units that are connected to that system.
That's a pretty cool feature.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. And so when then off the first one, if that goes in the heating, that puts the rest into heating mode. Doesn't put them, like if the other one heating for 68, doesn't put 68 degrees in the other controllers. All we're doing is just changing the mode to heating. That's it.
Gotcha.
So there's a very, very important piece to this when we're doing this is understanding, remember, that lowest address is the main unit that's dictating what mode for other controllers. So make sure that unit is priority.
Yeah.
Master bedroom. Or, whatever the customer chooses, living room, or kitchen, whatever that is, just making sure if you do switch that, if the first port is in a basement, it's never going to get utilized, then you know what I mean? Yeah. So just be aware of that.
And we can do this with Kumo Cloud as well with wireless sensors. We can have a changeover or a voting system.
That's their own different logic on that one. Correct.
Right. So this is SW9-1 is going to be another resettable dip switch. We have to reset power to get that to work.
Yes. Yeah. So that right there, those are the basics out. The top ones I like to talk about with Smart Multi. Obviously, there's more functions to that, but we're just going over the top ones I like to kind of go over.
Yeah.
Now we'll switch over to P Series.
Yeah. Let's talk about SW1-2.
Yeah, and that's going back to Smart Multi, clearing the air. So SW1-2 is that dip switch function is to clear the error code,
just like we talked about.
Just like we talked to Smart Multi, right? Exactly. Another one is a big one for changing out boards. Like say if the outdoor control board fails, I would like people to pay attention to SW dip switch bank 6 and 5 is for changing capacity, right? So SW6 is changing the capacity to that unit. Now, if you look at that's the SW6 dip switch bank. Now, if we look at SW5 bank, but reality, if you look at 5-5, we have to pay attention to that because P series, we have a PUZ and a PUY, right? Z is for heat pump, Y is for cooling only. So I can have a PUZ model, and if I change that dip switch 5-5 and leave it in the on position, if I turn that on, I have now changed that heat pump system into cooling only option.
So when you go up to a controller on the wall, in that
This
case,
is my favorite.
You're only going to have cooling.
You're only going to go cooling. And what's the biggest common mistake when I do this bug in my class is what contractors do is they go to that controller and go to the service manual for that controller, trying to find how do you add heat back on the controller. Then I ask the guys.
There is no way.
There's no way because I asked, it's like, what is this? And it's like, oh, it's a thermostat. And I'm like, really? I'm like, what? Are you sure it's a thermostat? And some will catch on. It's like, no, it's a controller. Right? So then they start thinking, I was like, okay, so where does a controller get its information from? Then they said, because I talk in my class, is the outdoor board is the boss of the system. It gets everything, communication.
Getting all its logic from
all
that.
the logic there. Then by doing that is by a simple dip switch, you can literally take off heat out of that whole entire system.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
watch what you're flipping, and when you're changing boards, make sure you tell that new board that you're putting in what that system is. Is it a heat pump or is it a cooling only?
Yeah. So and then when you're looking at guys, the best way to find capacity, right, for your system is the panel. Like look at the wire and smack inside the panel, bottom left hand corner. We have a section for capacity. Please pay attention because in one example, it will say a model. Say you have a 12,000 BTU. It will say PUZ A12 with the rest of the digit, and then you have to set these dip switches. Right below it is a PUY A12. So if your eyes are not paying attention, your eyes just go, "Oh, I see a 12, and here it is," and you're reading the bottom one, which is a PUY, and you have a PUZ.
Yeah.
So please pay attention to the model number when you're setting capacity.
Yep, that third letter in the model number is going to tell you whether it's a heat pump or cooling only.
Yep. And then the next set of dip switches at the outdoor is the big one, right? Test run. So it'd be 4-1 and 2. So when you do a test run is big because this is where we, when we set systems in test run, we actually put the compressor in a fixed position.
Yep.
Right? It doesn't ramp up and down.
Ignore set point.
Yeah, ignore set point. Exactly. We're setting a command to it and it's fixed at that position. And this is where it's good for testing, getting our delta T's, etc.
If you have to put gauges on the unit and you're doing a test,
that's a big one.
You should have this in test run. If you're
Absolutely.
doing a delta T, you should have this in test run.
Yes.
Right. But like anything else, if you're checking performance, if you're checking delta T's, make sure your filters are clean, your blow wheels are clean, your coils are clean, and your ductwork size properly. Right.
Right. Yes.
That should be from day one. Right.
Correct.
But test run is huge and should be used when you're diagnosing or checking performance on the unit.
Yep. And then the next one would be now we're going to go into P series indoor units. Now this next, go ahead.
Yeah, this is an important one, right?
It is.
We're getting a lot of calls for this.
Yeah, we get a lot of calls for this one. This next one is you guys have to pay attention. It's for 8th generation. So we're currently on 8th generation units for indoor. Yeah. So what's happening is we're finding in the field is we have simple MA controllers connected to what's called a 4-way cassette, the PLA. What will happen is it will be stuck in a screen display HO, HO, HO.
Which means hold on.
Hold on, exactly. Right. And that's it. Even though you did your part right. You installed it right.
It's wired right.
You wired right on TB15. You did what the output is 12 DC. I mean, you're doing your thing. Everything is correct. But what you need to do is you're going to have to hit a dip switch. And believe it or not, because in our service manuals, we have a section in our manuals that display what the dip switches are, right? But in this example, it does not show us what this dip switch means. You have to find, the only way I found this, or where we ever found it, is you have to go into the wiring schematic, zoom in, and then you will see on SW5, it says 5-8, turn it off when remote controller other than a PAR 40 is connected. So out of the box, that 8-gen indoor, it's looking for a PAR 40.
Okay, so the switch is on.
On, yes.
Okay, so for contractors using a simple MA, he's going to have to shut that switch off.
Switch it off. Okay. Yep. In order to do that, and we get questions why, and what that is. It's communication speed of the communication that
based on the controller
and the unit is talking with that bandwidth, whatever.
Okay.
And it's on. It's in high. It's talking into our higher fan speed, and the simple MAs cannot talk at that level. Okay. So in essence, we're turning it off and we're having that communication to a lower bandwidth.
Easy enough. Okay. Yeah. So this changed with our 8th generation.
8th generation.
Okay.
Yeah. And to find this, guys, is the service manual. Go to the indoor unit service manual and go to the wiring schematic. You will see it listed there.
Okay.
Yep.
That's good to know. Because I've been hearing that our tech support's been getting clobbered with this one.
Yeah.
So get the word out, right?
Yeah.
All right. What about this SUZ outdoor?
So, and it's funny, we know how we went over the P series outdoor, right? Guess what?
Same thing.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's SW1-2 is clear of the air, which we discussed, and then SW4-1 and 2 for test run. I mean, it's very, it's very similar to that. And then the next one is we can talk a little bit on the MXZ ported because it does have dip switches, right?
Yep.
But it does not have as much function as a
smart
multi, right? So like what we did with the smart multi, right? We can change the evaporating temperature. We can do the same thing on the ported unit, and it's SW2. SW2-3. That dip switch will it comes off. You turn that on. That will decrease the evap temp for that. And that is model specific for that. So you have to make sure to look in the service manual. And it's if you go into the service manual, it's section 11-3. And that's where you'll find that for that information for lowering the evap temp.
That's a huge one. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. The next one actually is our last one is let's talk about our one-way cassette. So it's our MLZ. Right. And now this is M series, like, whoa, there's no dip switches. Yeah, you're right. There's not. But we have what you call slide switches for that. So there's 2 slide switches on the MLZ. There's it's called slide switch SW3. That's for if we turn that to up, that's it to increase the air volume.
Okay. So
CFM.
For high ceilings.
Yeah. So increase air volume. Yeah. For higher, exactly. And then we have another slide switch called SWV1. And what that is airflow direction is heightened. Basically, you're telling it, and what you're doing by doing that, you're changing the operation of the vanes.
Okay.
Right? So we can actually get dispersed the air in the areas where it couldn't before because of the direction of the angle of the vanes.
Okay.
All right. So I get this question a lot. So when do I hit those? So here's the little thing. Typically, normal ceiling height is 8 feet for a one-way cassette. Yeah. What a lot of people don't know is ceiling cassette do not like high ceilings. In fact, the max install is 9 feet.
Good to know.
If you're in between that 8 and 9 feet, then that's when you can probably talk about it. If you're at 9 feet, then I'm going to tell you hit those slide switches that I just mentioned. SW3 for increasing air volume. SWV1 for airflow heightened for the vanes. So here's a little caveat I have to mention. If you hit the SWV1, which is airflow is heightened, you have to be careful when you hit this because you may get some customer complaints. Because what happens is, remember I told you about the vane operation, right?
Yeah.
So what it does is it angles the vane that the airflow almost practically goes across the ceiling.
Across the ceiling, yes.
And then it drops down so we can get it in the areas where it couldn't reach before, right? Well, what happens to the ceiling?
A little bit of noise.
No, not noise. You can actually get a little dust. So they have to clean it.
Yeah.
So you have to be aware of that.
Okay.
So if a contractor gets a complaint call, and they haven't, and they're taking over maybe a service contract or whatever it is, and they see that and they have no idea. It's probably one of the areas that I would be checking.
Yeah, and if you have like textured ceilings, this is where that dust really shows its face, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I have that in my house, and I have central AC with just regular 8x8 diffusers and textured ceiling in my living room, and it drives me nuts because trying to clean that is a nightmare, right? I have to use a brush with a vacuum cleaner. You can't really wipe it with a cloth or anything because you make a bigger mess than when you started with. That's a good to know, and again, I'm learning even more stuff about these units from you, Scott, and the MLZ especially. I knew there were switches in there. I just didn't know exactly what they did.
Yeah.
Knowing's half the battle.
Yep. And then we do have switches on our SVZ, right? For setting static pressure. We have switches for numbers, different reasons for what it is. But
so I can also, on the talking about the SVZ, I can flip dip switches on the air handler control board for static.
Correct.
I can also do it through a function setting.
Yeah. Yep.
Awesome. I think we nailed down the most important.
Yeah, there's obviously more on there. On their auto recovery. You know what I mean. But like I said, those are kind of the top ones that what it is.
All right. Yeah, we lost Paul somewhere. I don't know where he fell off the face of the earth, or he's making a shepherd's pie right now.
Shepherd's pie.
Maybe he got hungry.
Or you know what? Maybe he flew to Atlanta and is driving away to my house right now.
Yeah. Maybe. Yeah. But we had him remoted in, and I think he dropped off the meeting. Some technical difficulties there, but we'll see Paul on the next one. But if you need that recipe, Scott, for shepherd's pie,
I need that. Sounds. You know what's so scared about that? You're gonna say peas. You're going to throw peas in there? And I'm like, I'm out.
You don't do peas?
No, dude.
Oh, man. I mean, I'm not a super fan of peas.
Carrots, I'll be on board with carrots. I have no problem with that. Celery, I know people add random stuff, but peas, no.
Yeah, a couple of cans of corn.
All day long.
A couple of cans of corn. Get the good stuff. Don't get the store brand. Get the,
Oh, yeah, the good stuff.
The good stuff. Green Giant.
The Green Giant, yeah. You know what I do with kind of corn? I recommend doing. So what I do is get a pot, obviously take the juices out, just pour just the corn in the pot. And then I add, I cut up a red and yellow pepper. I put them in small dices, right?
Oh, you cooked that for me at your house.
Oh, yeah,
with some vinegar and some red
a little
pepper.
vinegar and honey.
I made that.
I add honey to it.
Yeah.
And then just a cupful. Right, a capful of vinegar into it.
Vinegar
at low heat, right, and then just get the peppers to that good crunch / softness to it. Oh, it comes out perfect.
I'm always trying to duplicate. You go to restaurants and you get.
I do the same thing. I do the same thing,
and it's got like a buttery sauce in the corn. I'm always trying to duplicate that and have a hard time trying to figure out what they do in the restaurant. I don't know if they're making like a roux and putting that in there.
You know what they do? They add 10 gallons of butter. That's what they do, Steve.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a steakhouse I go to here in Atlanta, and they make an excellent mashed potato. And what I probably made this 20 times because I'm tinkering with it, trying to match theirs. And it's mashed potatoes. I add a little milk. Cream cheese is the big one, right? And then on another pot, I dice my tomatoes real small, and I cook them low heat. Right, butter at the beginning. Add a lot of butter, and then just cook low heat and get them really soft, real soft. And at the very end, I add in a lot of brown sugar. Right, turn up the heat, melt that brown sugar into the onions, caramelize it, and then I add that in my mashed potatoes. Ooh. And then stir that sucker up. Oh,
yeah. It's funny you said what you said about butter. They use a lot of butter. I watched an interview with Anthony Bourdain. God rest his soul. Great guy. Loved watching his shows and everything. He was on an interview and he said that people would be horrified at the amount of butter that restaurants use to cook with.
Butter.
But that's why it's
delicious.
Yeah. It's delicious. Anyway, we'll see you guys on the next one.
Thanks.